Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, whatever part of the world you're currently listening to our podcast and video blog. My name is Mina. I'm the concept author of Faceconomics, which is the utilization of the social media platform in economic development worldwide. Thank you for joining me on today's April the 18th, close to 5 o'clock. It's about closing time in the East Coast for businesses. With this said, I just thought I reflect on this hypocrisy, major hypocrisy going on within the Democratic Party. All right, folks. As many of you are aware of, my parents came from, a foreign country. They immigrated to the U.S. legally. Actually, waited quite a bit of time in order for them to be approved to come to the U.S. All right, folks. And when they got to the U.S., it wasn't, the land of, milk and honey that they were expecting. They soon realized, just basically by the time their foot hit the ground, that they're actually going to be doing a lot of hard work. All right, folks. And they came to the U.S. legally. All right, folks. So now there's this issue about this immigrant from El Salvador who came to the U.S. illegally, one. And two, he was a part of a very violent organization. I'm not going to name the organization and I'm not going to name the individual because you're probably going to be able to find his story all over the news because the liberal news organization decided to plaster his news story all over their platform. On top of that, many of these Democrat politician is milking the story to the point that they're traveling to El Salvador and basically, advocating on behalf of this illegal immigrant that came to the U.S. without documentation, without approval from a sovereign country. He was not approved to enter the U.S. Okay, he just basically walked in and or went hiding, and now he managed to evade authorities for the longest time and basically, you know, uh, work around the system. So he was able to basically stay in the country. All right, folks. But he wasn't here he wasn't here legally to begin with. He was not approved nor invited by the U.S. You have to be invited to come to the U.S. via your visa approval. Okay. So he was not granted permission to enter the US. All right. Now, imagine the numbers of legal immigrants in America. All right, folks. Consider this. There are millions of people that immigrated to the US legally. Now, many of them went through adverse hardship. Many of them went through a lot of pain and grief and sorrow and you name it, they went through it if they're coming to the US from another country, on top of having to assimilate in the US. All right. Have you heard or seen any Democrat politician advocating for the rights of the legal immigrants in America? When was the last time did they go above and beyond to advocate on behalf of a legal immigrant in America? Okay, as much as they're doing what they're doing now for this person who was undocumented and have been reported by his wife to be abusive, to be violent. And I mean, that's the kind of people that the Democrats are wanting to advocate for and support. So are they looking to destroy the country and our society and just, you know, basically alienate everyone in this country? I mean, I just don't get it. The hypocrisy, within the Democrat Party is just overwhelming. All right. Matter of fact, I've asked for aid, relief, and justice in my own case. Okay, from various Democrat bigwigs, even with the White House during the Biden and Harris administration. Um, all I got was, okay, we're aware of your case, and that's it. For the 4 years that they were in office, they did nothing. Okay, not a thing. No advocacy, no outreach, no calling me saying, "Oh, Al, are you okay?" Nothing. All right, folks. So this case, just because it's a political case, mostly because of their hatred for the current administration, the Trump administration. So they're trying to spin things around, okay, doing their very best to paint this picture of um, Trump not wanting to support immigrants and not advocating for their rights, and you know, basically sending them back to their country of origin, which is not even the case. Uh, so, folks, wise up. All right, pay attention to the narrative. Pay attention to who's doing what. Pay attention to these politicians. Since when did they become experts on, you know, immigration laws in other countries, in El Salvador? Since when did they become, immigration experts of what's going on in terms of our security against violent immigrants that are illegally staying in our country? Okay, folks. As I told you before, when I was doing my video blog while I was walking, one of my friend's sister's friend was attacked, okay, by an illegal immigrant in Florida. Did you hear it in national news? Are they advocating, any of these Democrat politicians, are they advocating for the rights of Americans that were victimized by these illegals? I mean, no, you don't hear that because they're trying to spin things, to favor their narrative. All right, folks. So, these Democrat politicians are not out there to support the immigrant community, not the legal, at least, not the legal immigrant community, because if they were, then they'd be advocating on behalf of all legal immigrants, not the illegal ones, because the legal ones actually abide by the law. They play by the rules. Okay. They waited, they, made sure that they're in compliance with the law of the country that they're moving to and will eventually become a citizen of. Okay. Uh, think about what I'm telling you, folks, because this is just junk. It's like one big circus show with these hypocrite Democrat politicians. Okay, folks. And I don't know who would even support them. The Democrat Party has been trying to, panhandle this narrative that they're pro-immigrant, that they're pro people that whose civil rights have been violated, who's been marginalized. Uh, Never have I seen any of that manifesting in my case, in my own personal case. All right. And so I don't think anybody else is really, benefiting from, this agenda that they claim to be advocating for. They're just looking for some sort of political narrative so that they can go out there and say, okay, we supported legal, I mean, not legal or illegal, but immigrants in general. So there isn't even a classification. They don't talk about undocumented immigrants. They just say immigrants as if all immigrants came here legally and all immigrants came here illegally. They just basically created this narrative, a one label system within the Democratic Party saying that they're advocating for immigrants. Well, you got to classify. There are legal and undocumented or illegal immigrants. Okay, folks. Just like in any country on this planet, there's people moving in and out of a country. Some of them are coming in legally and some are coming in illegally. Now, if these politicians, these Democrat politicians, are using half of their brain, they would at least classify what they're talking about. Are they trying to gain acceptance from the illegal immigrant community, so that these people would vote for them and donate to their campaigns? or are they trying to tap into the legal immigrant community who they're basically alienating at this point? Because imagine if you come to the US legally, all right, right, following the laws of the land, and waiting years and years before you can even, be granted entry into the country. Imagine, what you had to deal with versus people that just basically decide to cross the border or overextend their stay or do whatever it is that they feel they're entitled to do in order to get access to the U.S. As immigrants, basically, that weren't abiding by the law of the land. So think about what I'm talking about, folks. I mean, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand the narrative. You don't necessarily have to be, very political savvy to understand the modus operandi of these Democrat politicians. They claim that they're supporting, justice, they're supporting equality, they're supporting the rights of the marginalized folks. Smart up. They need your vote. They need your money, okay, to propel their candidacy, okay. And they'll tell you anything and everything that they could possibly tell you to make you think that you're supporting something of virtue, something of value, something that is right and true. But behind closed doors, they're more interested in votes. They're more interested in keeping their jobs, and they're more interested in having power over you. And therefore, they will basically say anything and everything just to get you to, support their agenda. So put it this way: if you're an immigrant, a legal immigrant, for example, all right, you're a legal immigrant, and you come here and you go through the process, you jump through the hoops, you go through the bureaucracy, you go through all the pains and suffering and sacrifices in order for you to be able to live in the country that is extremely difficult to live in if you're here as a legal immigrant, is because you're basically behind the line automatically. All right. And then there's these people that jumps the line, okay, and decide to just abuse the system. Okay, they get free everything, free housing, free Medicaid, free schooling, free everything. And then you, a legal immigrant, is having to wait until it's your turn to get access to the benefits that you are promised for basically respecting the law. So the government tells immigrants around the world, respect our law. The US government promises that you get, the benefits of a legal immigrant and would have the right to ascend into citizenship. All right, folks. And then you have all these people jumping the line, ignoring the system, ignoring the law, ignoring, the sovereign right of the country to enforce their immigration laws. I mean, I understand, I get it. Most Americans that didn't immigrate into the US, most Americans that came here back, centuries ago, don't quite understand the plight of the legal and illegal immigrant. I get it. But guess what, folks? Um, if you were a legal immigrant and you went through the process, you basically paid your dues, how would you feel when an administration of a political party, okay, would just basically uh, ignore the promises that they have given you and promised to you, and afforded those promises to people that didn't even follow the rules. They didn't even follow, the overall system of immigration into the country. All right, folks, how would you feel? Do you feel more, uh, affirmed that your rights is respected by the government, by these politicians as a legal immigrant? Okay, how would you feel about that? I mean, again, folks, the Democrat Party is not looking out for the interests of the legal immigrant people. Okay, they're looking out for their interest to keep their power and authority over the legal immigrant population. And on top of that, they're trying to basically, um, put people in line that haven't been respectful of the line. They're jumping the overall system. They're ignoring the rules of the road and the playing field. All right, folks. So this should be extremely troubling for legal immigrants. I'm not talking about, a typical American. All right. I'm talking about for the legal immigrant community. Then I can imagine you'll be scratching your head and you'll be like, wait a second. I paid my dues. I went through the hoops. I went through the pain and suffering. And then people that are coming to the US and becoming violent, jumping the line and, disrespecting our society and our laws and norms. Um, no, that's not going to be accepted, at least shouldn't be accepted by anyone. May you be a legal immigrant or someone who's been in the country for a couple of generations, because essentially what these people, these politicians, these Democrat politicians are saying is that, okay, we're going to basically ignore your suffering, ignore your challenges, ignore everything that you had to put up with as the legal immigrant, and basically affording all those privileges to people that continues to violate our laws, continues to become violent, continues to conduct their overall um, modus operandi by bringing in other illegals into the country. So, folks, think about it, especially if you're a legal immigrant. All right, forget about this issue that they're calling the Trump administration all these kinds of names and garbage. No, I mean the legal immigrants are the ones that are really being affected by all these illegal immigration, because not only does it make immigration and the immigrant population look bad, it also destroys the overall credibility of a country to enforce legal immigration. Okay, basically they're saying these Democrat politicians, they're saying to everyone that wants to immigrate to the U.S., we're going to cherry pick who gets to come in and who doesn't get to come in legally. So basically, those people that enter legally, they actually put up a barrier for you to jump the hoops over, so that you have to be in compliance. But the ones that they're bringing in illegally, they're like, opening up the floodgates, and they're like, all right, come on in. We're going to support you. We're going to provide for you. We're going to, basically look the other way. Just go ahead and violate the law of the land. And, ultimately, people are just going to agree to it. They're just going to say, all right, we're just going to comply. We're just going to go with the flow in America, which no American should agree with. Because these politicians, we are the one that put them in power. Okay, we're not their servants. They're supposed to be helping us out. They're supposed to be serving us because we're paying their salary. Okay, we put them in power. Okay, think about the situation right now with this Democrats going to El Salvador, basically advocating for a gang member and somebody that violated our sovereign rights to begin with, as to inform to in basically enforce our immigration laws. All right, folks. Um, I feel for these immigrants that are lawfully entering the U.S. I feel for most of the immigrants that are here because they needed economic relief or some sort of overall financial ability to sent back to their countries. I feel for them because I know what they're having to deal with. But at this point in the game, folks, none of the narrative that the Democrat politicians are saying about this you know isolated case uh, is actually credible. Okay, because essentially they're telling the legal immigrant community to basically, all right, you guys went through the process, you went through the hardship, you jumped the hoops and did everything correctly. So we're basically just going to say forget about everything that you went through. All right, we're just going to support the ones that decided to violate our laws. Okay, hopefully this kind of narrative would be considered by the legal immigrant community and also by the large U.S. population. With this said, my name is Mina. I'm the concept author of Faceconomics, the utilization of the social media platform in economic development. Thank you for your time. Take care.